Before we begin, I want to thank all my patrons for their support and for making it possible for me to share this and other videos with everyone for free. If you would like to help support this channel, please consider becoming a patron. Visit my page or click the join button below. You can also click the thanks button if you prefer. Welcome back to my channel. These weren't just high-end prostitutes or entertainers, they were captives, many taken from far-flung corners of the empire and beyond. Some were kidnapped, others bought and sold. Many more were simply seized during wars and rebellions. They had to master the art of palace, politics, outmaneuvering rivals, and staying one step ahead of jealous lovers and envious colleagues. At any moment, they could be discarded, replaced, or eliminated. The Sultan, after all, was a notoriously fickle creature, and the women knew their position depended entirely on his whims. It was a terrifying prospect that kept them constantly on edge, forever aware of their own mortality. There were no real friends in the harem, only wary allies and potential enemies. These were the Ottoman princes, the very heirs to the empire itself. They were locked up in solitary confinement, cut off from the world and denied any real education or socialization. Others turned violent, attacking their guards or screaming curses at the Sultan. In the end, these Sakalda, blessed with the gift of longevity, having survived childhood illnesses and the palace intrigues, died as they had lived, alone, forgotten, and at the mercy of their jailers. It was a macabre display of power and paranoia, a reminder that even those closest to the Sultan were expendable pawns in his twisted game of chess. Take, for instance, Kösem Sultan, who started life as a simple concubine, but rose to become the queen mother, a position that gave her extraordinary influence over her son, the Sultan, and the entire empire. She orchestrated palace intrigues, maneuvered rivals out of the picture, and even had a number of enemies poisoned or It was a cruel and unusual upbringing, but one that was designed to protect the dynasty from the threat of palace coups and civil wars. Her story is a testament to the agency women could sometimes find within the confines of the harem. It was a place where silence was golden and secrecy was paramount. Subscribe and click the bell icon to receive notifications of new videos. Consider becoming a member to get your name in the credits and to support the channel. If you would like to learn more about the Ottoman Empire, check out my playlist. And officials were known to take bribes to ensure certain cases were dismissed or decided in favor of powerful haremites. The vastness of the Ottoman Empire meant that there was always a steady stream of captives flowing into the harem, many of whom were destined to die there. Those who disappeared from the harem were often erased from history, their deaths hushed up and their memories wiped clean. But it's also a reminder of the cutthroat nature of palace politics where loyalty meant nothing and survival was the ultimate victory. These men, too, were captives, taken from various parts of the empire and subjected to brutal, genital surgery that removed their testicles and rendered them impotent. The year was 1648, and Ibrahim, increasingly unbalanced, had just returned from a hunting trip. In a fit of rage, or perhaps a jealous frenzy, he ordered the immediate drowning of 280 of his concubines in the Bosphorus. He accused them of plotting against him, though whether such a thing actually existed is unknown. It was a tragic toll, but one that helps us understand the true nature of the Ottoman harem. A place where beauty and brutality coexisted, where power was intoxicating, but its pursuit could lead to ruin. Maybe Ibrahim was right, but maybe he was merely inventing threats as a way to assuage his fears. We may never know, but it was a double-edged sword. While it may have preserved the empire's stability, it also robbed its future rulers of the knowledge and skills they needed to govern. Confined to their cells, the princes had little else to do but watch the centuries pass. Here, surrounded by manicured gardens and serene fountains, men plotted, schemed, and betrayed in a relentless pursuit of power. They saw their fathers and brothers come and go, heard the echoes of courtly life beyond their doors, and realized that when they emerged, if they ever did, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The eunuchs patrolled the labyrinthine corridors of the harem, enforcing its strict rules and punishing infractions with swift and brutal efficiency. They were also tasked with carrying out the Sultan's orders, whether it was to spy on a concubine, deliver a message, or carry out an execution. They were the Sultan's eyes and ears, and they wielded that power with absolute authority. For the Ottomans, castration was seen as a way to ensure the purity and sanctity of the women they held in thrall. By removing the eunuch's ability to procreate, they became, in effect, guardians of the harem, charged with ensuring the Sultan's women remained pure and untainted. Any slip, any mistake could spell ruin, banishment, or worse, death. The favorite concubines did have some advantages. They enjoyed access to the finest food, clothing, and jewels, and they might even bear children and thereby gain enormous power. The mother of a future sultan held an especially elevated status. And once inside, they were stripped of their names, backgrounds, and identities, given new ones by their captors and forbidden from ever speaking of their pasts again. Today we are going to talk about the shocking secrets of the Ottoman Empire's pleasure palaces, where a shocking number of people met a horrible end. Two outsiders. These residences looked like an Orientalist fantasy, a mesmerizing mix of lavish architecture, lush gardens, and golden interiors. but those who lived within them knew better. Behind the thick walls of the Topkapı Palace lay a world of intrigue, brutality, and endless peril. They were denied families and children and forced to live out their days in a sterile environment devoid of human warmth. The psychological toll was immense, and many turned to alcohol or opium to numb the pain of their lost humanity. Their enforced celibacy also made them desperate for sexual release, which they sometimes acted out in violent and disturbing ways. Despite their crucial roles as enforcers and guardians, the eunuchs were never trusted by the women of the harem. They were outsiders, their mutilated bodies and vacant eyes, a constant reminder of the price of disobedience and the ruthlessness of the imperial court. For the thousands of men and women who lived there, the harem was more like a gilded cage than a haven of luxury. How many? Well, just keep watching. By the end of the episode, you will know exactly how many. The vast, opulent pleasure palaces that housed the Ottoman royal court were often referred to as the harem. The prized possessions were those deemed the most beautiful, yes, but also the most obedient, subservient, and cunning. The young ones were sent to special schools where they were taught everything from needlework and poetry to seduction and intrigue. They were groomed to become the perfect companion, entertainer, or even political asset. Those deemed less desirable might find themselves relegated to menial tasks, with little hope of ever rising in status. The centerpiece of the harem was the harem proper, a vast labyrinth of courtyards, chambers, and gardens where hundreds of women lived. From the moment they arrived, each woman underwent a battery of tests, physical, psychological, and political, designed to assess their value to the imperial household. Even for the favored few, life in the harem was a precarious balancing act. But even as they basked in the luxury and adulation, a constant shadow hung over them. In the heart of this deadly game, the harem was also home to a small army of eunuchs. It was a grim duty that demanded strict discipline and unwavering obedience. Despite their important roles, the eunuchs were themselves prisoners of the harem, trapped in a gilded cage of their own. Meanwhile, away from the intrigues of the harem, another group of captives languished in the palace cages. By keeping the princes isolated and ignorant, the sultans hoped to prevent them from forming alliances or gaining the support they would need to launch a bid for power. For many, the solitude and despair drove them mad. Some died of broken hearts or were found muttering to themselves, reliving past glories or imagined futures. While the harem was the center of Ottoman domestic life, the courtyard outside its walls was a theater of violence and paranoia. One of the most infamous incidents in harem history occurred here during the reign of Sultan Ibrahim the Mad. What we do know is that in the early hours of the next morning, 280 bodies were dumped into the sea, a grim spectacle that shocked even the jaded courtiers. Yet it was also in this very courtyard that the most powerful women in the empire made their moves. When her son was deposed, she didn't hesitate to seize power, ruling in his place until her own death. Many of those who entered the Ottoman harem would die there, their bodies turning up in the royal kitchens, strangled in their rooms, or thrown into the sea. Even the grand halls of justice were not immune to the harem's reach. As judges over the centuries, tens of thousands of lives were cut short within its walls, victims of palace, politics, jealous lovers, bored sultans, and the ever-present threat of disease. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it.